You ever watch a movie about a zombie outbreak and wonder how you might react in a similar crisis? You picture yourself spouting one-liners and spraying buckshot into the pursuing horde as you and your hodgepodge band of survivors try to escape to safety? Let's face it, we've all thought about it, and now Left 4 Dead has arrived to give you the chance to live it from the safety of your own home. And live it you will, because Left 4 Dead does an excellent job of drawing you into the survival experience. You play as one of 4 survivors, regardless of whether you're playing by yourself, split screen with a friend, or online with up to 4 players. The characters you play as are detailed and likable and have a great deal of things to say. Their banter is not only instructive, it's also immersive. You'll definitely appreciate it when playing by yourself.
Heads up!
Though you may not appreciate the AI's reluctance to use pipe bombs, or refusal to join you on a safer, elevated position. Left 4 Dead is definitely best when played with a group of other human players, because on-the-fly strategy is so key to your survival. Though your teammates' voices may drown out the in-game characters, hearing that note of desperation creep into your buddy's voice as he cries out for help is more immersive than any pre-recorded voice could ever be. Teamwork is essential, so if you run across an uncooperative player online, they can really sour things up. Fortunately, Left 4 Dead features a voting system that allows you to call a vote to change the difficulty or boot a player. This is especially important because friendly fire is always on, so someone could... What? Oh, yeah, I said always on. So watch where you're pointing that shotgun, or automatic rifle, or pistol for that matter. All the weapons are effective and fun to use, though the guns you get when you're further along in each campaign are decidedly more fun and deadly. Each of the 4 campaigns takes our 4 intrepid survivors through a variety of urban, suburban, and rural environments. These environments are grim and bleak, and cluttered with the detailed remains of a society overrun. They are also cluttered with zombies, or infected, or normatively challenged humanoids. Whatever you call them, they are everywhere. As you enter a given area, you may see a bunch of them standing around, groaning, vomiting, fighting amongst themselves. You know, zombie stuff. Enter through this same area during a different playthrough and the scene could be deserted. The zombies could be waiting and then just rush out and attack you, or they could wait until you turn around the next corner. They're really unpredictable, and this behavior means you'll have to be ever vigilant. And this makes the whole experience way more tense, and it makes each victory more rewarding. Normal infective are pretty nasty. They're those speedy kind of nasty zombies that run at you pell-mell, barreling towards you as fast as they can without falling down. When they do fall down in an explosion of gunfire, they flop to the side or go rocketing backwards, limbs flying off in a perversely satisfying way. In numbers, they are quite deadly, but definitely manageable. When the special infected get into the mix, things get sticky. These guys have special powers that can throw a huge wrench into your strategical gears, turning a bad situation into a holy crap, I'm gonna die situation. Without going into too much detail, vomiting, clawing, and frog-like tongue grabbing are just some of the nasty abilities you'll have to contend with. If these abilities sound oddly intriguing, then wait till you hear about the Versus mode. In this online mode, up to 8 players can compete in 2 teams of 4. One team plays as the survivors, and the other team spawns as the special infected. If you thought getting through a level alive was a tough proposition, wait until you've got a team of human players coordinating their fiendish zombie assaults. The infected can respawn, while survivors cannot. So the longer survivors take to get through, the more shots the infected get. This adds a whole new level of tension and makes for some heated, intense games. Once the survivors die or complete the level, the teams switch sides. Versus mode is great because it requires a whole different kind of strategy. Rather than fighting off a huge nebulous force as you progress towards an objective, you have to set up ambushes and execute targeted strikes on a small group. Thinking like a survivor and thinking like an infected are 2 distinctly challenging yet equally engaging ways to play Left 4 Dead. Teamwork is vital for both, and fractured, uncooperative teams can be really frustrating to play on, as is the case with most co-op games. Fortunately, Left 4 Dead stands head and shoulders above most co-op games. The frantic, ever-changing pace of the action means you're always facing different challenges and always winning new victories or dying new horrible deaths. Only 4 campaigns to play through, this dynamic element is essential and keeps the game feeling fresh each time you go through it. So if you've got a few friends with even a passing interest in first-person shooters or the zombie apocalypse, Left 4 Dead will provide you all with plenty white-knuckle, zombie-blasting, survivor-mauling good times. As each passing year brings us closer and closer to the zombie apocalypse, it's heartening to know that the folks over at Valve are doing their darndest to help us prepare. While the release of Left 4 Dead 2 merely 1 year after the original Left 4 Dead may seem too soon for some, this sequel heaps plenty of new content onto the exciting, dynamic gameplay that you know and love. New campaigns, new guns, and a new competitive mode are the highlights, not to mention charismatic new survivors and hideous new infected. While all this stuff gives fans ample reason to play Left 4 Dead 2, it doesn't make the core action feel substantially different, so if it didn't light your fire last year, then it probably won't this year, even with the new incendiary ammo. That said, if you had any fun playing Left 4 Dead over the past year, or have any interest at all in living out both sides of the zombie apocalypse, you're gonna have a great time playing Left 4 Dead 2.
Hello?
Oh, this is not happening.
Anyone here?
This is not happening.
The new crop of survivors find themselves in Louisiana, a few hours late for government evacuation. They are a diverse, entertaining crew with stronger personalities that play off each other well. They embark on 5 new campaigns that once again take them through a variety of environments. And each campaign map is really well designed, with just enough clues to keep you headed in the right direction, but not so much that it's always obvious where you need to go. There are a few neat twists that make them more exciting as well. While most still involve trekking from point A to point B, one of them sends you from point A to point B and then back to point A again. Trick is, there are serious rainstorms on the way back, which not only make the infected hordes really angry, they significantly alter the layout of the level. Other moments, like running along a roller coaster track and navigating a rural swamp, are fraught with more peril than usual, and the climactic last stand in which you must race to cross an infested bridge is intense and awesome.
Get your ass up.
To help pave your way through these campaigns, there are some fun new weapons, including a sort of assault/sniper rifle that takes the scoped deadliness of the hunting rifle to a whole new level. The big addition to your potential arsenal is melee weapons. Axes, crowbars, cricket paddles, and frying pans are just some of the things that you can pick up and smash the undead with. Though close quarters combat with the infected has its risks, the temptation to decapitate, delimb, and otherwise bludgeon is one that you should not resist. The infected die in a variety of horrible looking and totally enjoyable new ways. A shotgun blast might leave a gaping abdominal hole that the infected may or may not succumb to, and the various automatic weapons and sharp objects each yield their own grisly results. Oh, and there's a chainsaw too. Yeah, it's fun. In addition to the challenging array of difficulties in the normal campaign mode, the new realism mode adds some extra, well, realism to help make things tougher. Gone are the glowing outlines around fellow survivors, guns, and other items, and you won't know how easy and unsettling it is to get separated from the crew when you turn around and your friends are nowhere to be seen. Communication is key here, even more so than normal because dead allies only respawn in safe houses. The new defibrillator item can bring them back from the dead, providing you can find their body. But with a bunch of the gamey aids turned off and tougher infected foes, realism effectively ramps up the tension. Versus mode is back, allowing 2 teams of 4 to play through a whole campaign, alternately playing as survivors and special infected. Coordinating attacks and killing survivors is just as gruesomely fun as it was last year, and surviving these assaults is still very satisfying. A few new special infected contribute new special attacks and allow some nasty new strategies, like laying down a pool of deadly acid to block a choke point, or jumping on a survivor's head and steering them into a pool of deadly acid. Yes, it's as fun as it sounds. If the campaign and versus mode run a bit long for your tastes, there are 2 modes that offer shorter form fun. Survival mode, included as downloadable content for the original game, is included here, complete with new maps from each campaign. This mode is straightforward: survive as long as you can. Each map has an array of weapons and aids and hits you with increasingly tougher waves of the infected. If you prefer to play as the infected, then scavenge mode is where it's at. In this mode, the survivors try to gather gas tanks from around the map and fill a generator, adding time with each deposit. The infected try to kill them. Scavenge encapsulates the thrill of versus by forcing the survivors to move together and accomplish an objective in the face of enemy assaults, and it does so in short 3-round sessions. Between campaign and versus, survival and scavenge, there's a lot of ways to enjoy Left 4 Dead 2, and of course, it's all seamlessly integrated online. You can play split screen on the Xbox 360 in any mode, and finding friends and joinable games online is a snap. Left 4 Dead 2 is every bit the tense and engaging shooter that its predecessor was. The core action isn't substantially different, so don't come looking for an overhaul or a significant leap forward. What you can expect is exciting new campaigns, entertaining new characters, fun new guns and equipment, and nasty new infected powers. From the gleeful delight of decapitating an enemy, to the harrowing tension of a dramatic last stand, to the morbid satisfaction of killing survivors, Left 4 Dead 2 makes the apocalyptic infection of the human race seem like a whole lot of fun.
The first downloadable add-on for Left 4 Dead 2, ominously titled The Passing, takes Coach, Nick, Rochelle, and Ellis on yet another trek through the zombie-filled streets of New Orleans. The new campaign is only 3 chapters long, but it lasts about as long as all the others. The first section begins with a rendezvous with the survivors from the original Left 4 Dead, but after a brief but enjoyable exchange, you're off into the back alleys, through buildings, and across streets as you head to your destination. These environs feel familiar, and the raging storm gives everything a washed-out feel. No pun intended. You won't want to miss the graffiti in the pool hall bathroom, and you definitely won't want to turn on the speaker system in the park. But aside from these touches, this section doesn't have much to offer in the way of environmental novelty. This second section takes you underground into some claustrophobic basements and sewers, complete with stoop jokes. And the third section is one long last stand that takes the form of a scavenge game. You'll have some welcome support from the original survivors as you scramble to grab gas cans and fill the generator, and the infected hordes ramp up the difficulty nicely here. Though it is reasonably long, the passing doesn't feel as unique or interesting as the campaigns that came in the box. The scenery and gimmicks are largely familiar, making this add-on campaign feel like more of the same. That's not to say it isn't good, because it is. It just isn't great. There are a few other new elements worth mentioning, like footlockers jammed full of helpful items and a powerful yet rare new gun. There are new achievements, as well as a new breed of uncommon common infected, the Fallen Survivor, who drops a few helpful items when you put them down. The big addition here is a new gameplay mode called Mutations, which hosts weekly rotating variants on existing modes. The first week featured Realism Versus, which stuck the survivors with realism restrictions, but let the infected retain their ability to view character silhouettes. This week features Bleed Out, a campaign mode mutation in which your health is constantly draining. Mutations adds a great source of freshness and variety, essentially promising bite-sized DLC modes for the foreseeable future. Mutations may vary in quality from week to week, but those looking for new ways to revisit the zombie apocalypse will likely be pleased. The Passing isn't must-have DLC for anyone who ever enjoyed Left 4 Dead 2, but it is certainly enjoyable. There's some witty new banter between the survivors, and Mutations is a cool source of novelty that promises to add something fresh every week. If you're a PC player, congrats, The Passing is free. Xbox 360 owners will have to pony up $7 for the privilege, but if you are still playing or were thinking about how fun it would be to revisit Left 4 Dead 2, the passing is a good bet.
So while we were working on the original Left 4 Dead, everybody on the team enjoyed this style of play a lot, this co-op action horror movie experience. And as we were building it, people had a bunch of ideas for how they wanted to move that forward, how to really amplify that experience. And that's sort of one of the frustrating things when you're working on a game, especially when you're working in sort of a new design direction, is you have to sort of cut off at some point and say, well, we'll do that in the next game. But as soon as we finished Left 4 Dead, everybody who'd worked on it said, we want to go and do Left 4 Dead 2 now. There are all these things we felt that, were ideas that we got while we were playing, especially when they were playtesting Left 4 Dead, that they wanted to put into a sequel. So it's interesting, the difference in the reactions between announcing Left 4 Dead and announcing Left 4 Dead 2. When we announced the original Left 4 Dead, the big issue is getting people excited about a new game from Valve. We still have people who are saying, what's happened with Adrian Shepard? I want to know what's going on there. Or what about Day of Defeat? We'd like something there. So when you announce something new, what you have to do is convince people that it's an interesting game, that there's something unique that's going to be worth their time and energy. And that's what a lot of the focus was on Left 4 Dead.
Like this before. Jesus, don't let that stop you from smearing it all over yourself.
With Left 4 Dead 2, there was already so much awareness and excitement based on the fact that we just shipped the first game that we were excited because we got to talk about, hey, we're going to do a sequel and we're going to do it in a year, which is really different and new for us. There was some segment of the community that was like, hey, you're doing a sequel in a year, so what's going on there? Why are you changing your pattern? What does this tell us? Are you suddenly turning this into a sports game, and they're going to churn out another crap sequel every 12 months. And so that was something that was different for us in terms of how we would talk to the community and educate them as to why this was a good thing, not a bad thing, and what it would mean for them in terms of the game that they would get to play on November 17th. One of the concerns that were raised by people who had Left 4 Dead is, what's different enough about this to justify it being a new sequel? So we spent a lot of time talking about what the scope is, both artistically in terms of the scale of the game, how the gameplay is evolving, what are some of the technological pieces that have moved forward, and doing anything we could to make sure that our fans, who are the reason that we exist, the reason that we have a business, understood why Left 4 Dead 2 was a really positive evolution rather than just us trying to come up with a way of stripping money out of a successful and popular game. So we tried everything. We tried to find people who were sort of articulate spokespeople for that skepticism about this and bring them in here and show them what we were doing and say, look, this is exactly what we're doing. These are the people who are building it. Ask them anything you want. Play the game. And that was proved to be a pretty effective way of communicating with sort of these really hardcore members of the community and reassure them that this was a good thing rather than something that they should be skeptical and worried about. By really focusing on communicating with that group, we can also measure how well the Left 4 Dead 2 is doing in pre-orders. And so Left 4 Dead 2 is actually, for people who've joined the boycott group on Steam, we can look at their pre-orders, and they're actually pre-ordering the product at a higher rate than Left 4 Dead 1 owners who weren't in the boycott. And what that tells us is that we did a really good job of understanding what these issues were and communicating with this group of what, at the end of the day, are some of our most hardcore and supportive fans over the history of the company. So Left 4 Dead 2 is an interesting product from just a project management perspective. Tom Leonard is a really senior game developer. He's been in worked on a lot of very interesting projects. And he had a theory about project management that he wanted to try out. One of the things everybody's aware of is there's a lot of crunch time in video game development. That can be really harmful to people over time. Some people get burned out and they don't really come back for like 5 years. They're just so fried by the experience of shipping a title. People just rolled off a pretty difficult shipping product. Left 4 Dead 1 was pretty challenging for us in terms of how much work we had to do, how much integration we had to do with various groups, and making sure that it would run on all of the different hardware platforms and on the Xbox. And so with Left 4 Dead 2, he wanted to attack this problem. And there are aspects of that from a design perspective and how you design the schedule and how you manage workloads. And it also meant that they tried very hard to front load their work as much as they could. So they actually tried to be in sort of mini crunch mode from right at the beginning. And what that meant is we're sort of in this kind of strange situation now at the end of the project where the product's already very far along in terms of going into stores, and we still have weeks before the actual ship date. So in the past, I've been on projects where we're like racing to the airplane to throw the disc into the door to get it to replication in time to get it into stores. And in this case, because of the approach to front-loading the hectic part of the schedule at the beginning and removing all of the uncertainty about the project at the front rather than at the end, we're actually spending a lot more time sort of sitting around playtesting without a lot of frantic development going on. I think that when you're designing and building a game like Left 4 Dead, you reach a point where you have to stop, right? And during the course of that, where you're finishing the concept of the original project, you get a whole bunch of ideas for what you want to do in the sequel. This is just a natural part of building games. And I think most everything that's in Left 4 Dead 2 grew out of that sense of Left 4 Dead 1. I think with Left 4 Dead 2 finished now, we have a bunch of ideas. They're a little bit broader ideas. Tom Leonard and Steve Bond are two of the guys who worked on the project. And they're really interested in this problem of scalable artificial intelligence. So the inspiration we got out of Left 4 Dead 1 led to Left 4 Dead 2. The inspirations that we seem to be walking away from Left 4 Dead 2 are really about trying to think about the impact that Larrabee and similar approaches are going to have on the design of artificial intelligence systems going forward. And not just the code piece of it, but the production piece. It's like, how do you make the level designers 10 times as productive? That's the big challenge that we face right now. How do you create the density of game experience that we think is possible with these new CPU architectures that are going to be coming down the pike? And that seems to be what we're taking away from Left 4 Dead 2. It's not like the Left 4 Dead 2 team wants to turn around and spend another year and build Left 4 Dead 3. Their reaction out of this game is to say, I need to go spend 2 to 3 years trying to tackle this really big, gnarly technology problem. So it's sort of interesting to see what we come out of a project and where it propels us into the next stage. We still have a bunch of content that we're going to be creating for the original Left 4 Dead. It's a very popular product with customers, and we want to continue to support them, and we also need to do the same thing for Left 4 Dead 2. I think there are also lots of opportunities between interoperability between our various games, so we're trying to look at sort of crossover DLC ideas, because we think that there's a lot of overlap in the groups of people who play these, and so giving people incentives to move between the different games is something that we're looking at a lot. There'll be the standard sorts of things, more weapons, more campaigns, more special infected, but we're also, I think, from a design perspective, looking at all of our games and trying to think of, are there ways to add value to these collections of games? So if somebody has Team Fortress 2 and they have Left 4 Dead 2, what's exciting and interesting to those kinds of customers? Our view in general on these sort of post-shipment releases is we want them to be free, right? It's a great way for us to get the community excited. It helps the mod community to have an active and energized user base of our existing game. It gets people excited to buy gifts for their friends and things like that. So that's really our strong preference. The challenge on the consoles is that they don't have that sort of model. For us, we think that it's a real problem on the consoles not to support that, because we think it's a really proven and successful business model, and trying to impose a single model for things like MMOs, music games, multiplayer action games like ours and so on, in terms of DLC pricing, I think is very restrictive. It's like an operating system saying you can build any application you want so long as it's a spreadsheet. So as far as supporting other consoles, we're always evaluating those options. The mobile platforms, I've got an iPhone, and I'm really intrigued by this notion of what mobile experiences are and how they tie into the overall gaming experience. There's the Mac. We really get a lot of requests from Mac users that they'd like to see games. PlayStation 3, the Wii. So what we tend to do is we look at how much we can create that's valuable to customers for the amount of effort. So if we have this much bandwidth to work on stuff, we say, are we better off broadening the platform, or are we better off investing more in the platforms that we have? So we do that evaluation constantly and try to look at what the trade-offs are and advantages. Going to any of the other consoles beyond the Xbox is a really big time commitment, and it's a small ongoing tax. So you have this big lump of work you have to do up front, and then each time you release, you have the tax that's associated with it. And there are surprising taxes you don't expect. For example, managing the differences in models between DLC on the PC versus those individual consoles that you don't anticipate. I remember sort of back in the late 90s, it was really questionable that multiplayer games, that you could actually sell a multiplayer game successfully rather than a multiplayer game being sort of this afterthought on a single player game. And it seems like the same thing's happening nowadays in terms of co-op. It's like, oh, well, you have to have a fun multiplayer game, but co-op needs to be this sort of add-on because there isn't a large enough market or there aren't interesting enough design opportunities to really create compelling experiences. So I think Left 4 Dead is a good example of how the customers were ahead of us once again. I hope that it's inspiring other game companies to go after these kinds of co-op game experiences.
Excuse me!
Of course, the zombie movie, nothing quite goes as planned. You forget your gun bag at first, you forget the flares, the signal, old Virgil back again, and of course, the gas station's out of gas. So instead of the simple run to go get gas, you actually have to go traverse through the whole city and through the actual old sugar mill to go to a working gas station.
Can we not shoot each other, please?
Hunter's got Ellis!
So this one introduces some new elements to Left 4 Dead 2, which are weather effects. Hard rain, obviously. It's not just a catchy title. There's a lot of rain going on, right?
Yeah, correct. So the first time when you start, you actually go through the city and the sugar mill. When you get your gas, you have to come back, obviously, because you want to go back to Virgil and the boat. But as you're coming back, the weather's picked up, and all as you're going, you'll see the weather get worse and worse. But definitely it turns the corner as you're heading back, and you'll actually see storms come up out of nowhere. And you'll get a little hint that you'll see some lightning, and you'll realize, oh, we've got to find some cover really quick because the hordes will come when the storms come. And so all of a sudden it'll be blinding rain, you'll barely be able to see, you got to really stick close to your buddies, and then there's just swarms of zombies come. It's especially bad as you first start coming back. There's a big cane field that you have to go through, which is very similar to the cornfields Blood Harvest, and we all know how hard those were to go through. So it added a storm to those, and they become really difficult.
So one of the other things that you guys are doing new with this campaign is you're not just going from point A to point B, you're sort of going from point A to B and back to A again. What was the inspiration behind that design decision?
We really wanted to give the players something they're familiar with but turned on its head. So as you're going through the first time, you kind of can note some landmarks. There's a garage sale in the city. There's a playground. There's a couple other things inside the mill itself. But on your way back, walking through the land isn't nearly as easy because there's all this water from the rain. And so this swampy movement will slow you down. So you actually want to take some higher roads. And you'll notice all of a sudden what wasn't apparent the first time through is there's all these other routes you could take over the tops of things, on rooftops, on top of the big containers they have at the mill and stuff. And so you actually take those routes back most of the time, unless you get pulled off by a smoker, of course, and you're back in the muck and plowing through there. And so we wanted to be able to give you this thing that you're familiar with, but yet not familiar with. And so you'll definitely see teams kind of struggling with, should we just run through the water down the middle of the street, or should we keep to the rooftops? And in Versus, of course, the infected are all about knocking off those rooftops and back into the water and slowing you down.
You got to learn to shoot.
speaking of the water, let's talk about how that affects the gameplay. There's some obvious ones like, hey, you know, Molotov cocktails probably aren't going to work, but there's some less obvious ones, which is the fact that once you get into that water, you're kind of trudging through and you can't really run, right?
Yeah, so then you have things like when the charger comes charging at you, it's a lot harder to get out of his way. The other specialists are just able to really kind of come in and attack you a lot clearer. And so you really just have to keep on your toes, and really you really want to stay out of the water. And we give you a lot of different alternate paths through the city, a bunch of different buildings you can move through. You can choose to go through second floors, first floors, you know, kind of however you want to navigate it. It's really wide open.
Hey, run! Fire coming!
Shooting me? That's some crazy shit.
Hard Rain felt pretty sadistic at certain points. I noticed there was no shortage of witches on this campaign.
Yeah, it seems the witches kind of like the sugar mill. They enjoy the scent of sugar, I guess. Actually, during development, we had some of the other developers would send us bugs that, hey, I got 3 witches here. This seems broken. And then it's like, no, this is by design. And they're not just regular witches. They're not just sitting down, not moving. They're actually wandering around. So you'll see it's like guard formations almost of you having to try to figure out, oh my God, you know, how are we going to go through this? How are we going to avoid setting off one? Because we set off one, we're probably going to set off the other. And often you kind of have to just sit and wait and let them pass, and then you can work your way through.
Each of the campaigns in Left 4 Dead 2 has its own sort of unique, uncommon, common. Which is the one that we see in this one?
Well, so the sugar mill was actually being torn down and scrapped. So we have a lot of workers with their worker gear on. You'll see they're actually wearing reflective tape, which is helpful in the storm. But they're also wearing hard hats and air protection. So, A, they take a lot of damage. B, those earmuffs stop them from hearing pipe bombs. And while if you throw a pipe bomb and there's only 1 or 2 of them, it's not a big deal. But as you get right into the heart of the sugar mill, you'll get swarms of these guys. And all of a sudden your pipe bombs don't work, and you actually have to use something like the boomer bile to fight against them.
Need some help! Get up, get up, get up! All right, thanks. Come on.
Now, I noticed that in Left 4 Dead 2, some of those 5th chapter finales are you're sprinting from one spot to another, which was different from the first one, which was just, you know, you're in a standoff, you're holed up. But in Hard Rain, it kind of returns to that Left 4 Dead style standoff at the very end, right?
Yeah. Well, so we have you go up on top of Burger Tank and you turn the sign on, and that's how you're going to alert Virgil. And we wanted to give you a throwback kind of to that, but it's not quite, because normally in Left 4 Dead 1 we would give you multiple places that we thought were good to hold out. You could have your backs against the wall here. This is a solid defense. Here we actually give you no place that's actually very good to hold out. The roof of the Burger Tank's actually been ripped open, so there's a giant hole in there. All the ledges end into being torn off into the water. Tanks can send you flying. And inside the Burger Tank itself is just a maze of chairs, so it's hard to move. So we give you what feels like the old style, but almost it's not, because you really have to just leave yourself really open on the roof of the Burger Tank fighting off the infected.
Reloading!
And we also got to play a little bit of the new scavenge mode, which you guys talked about a week ago. When you first showed it off, you were showing the motel map, which is sort of cramped little area. There's not a whole lot of room to explore. But the maps we saw from Hard Rain while playing Scavenge, they were a lot more spacious.
Yeah, so there's 6 total maps, and they're all played differently. And we kind of wanted to have this variety of, so if you like, for example, in Hard Rain, the first map we played, the Milltown, if you decide to go down one route, there's a really long, far way to go to get the farthest cans. And there's points where you're just not going to make it in time. So you have to kind of really strategize how you want to do that. Well, when we played the motel, you can see all the cans pretty close by, and it's really which ones you want to go at in which order. So, you know, it's just different on each of the campaigns.
Well, Chet, you are absolutely the best scavenge coach that I have played with so far. I wish everybody watching at home could be so lucky to play scavenge with you. Chet, before I let you go, can you tell us when is Left 4 Dead 2 going to be available in stores and which platforms?
So Left 4 Dead 2 will be out this November 17th on PC and 360, and if you pre-order, you'll get access to the demo October 27th.
All right, Chet, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
There you go, Left 4 Dead 2. Stay tuned for more coverage over the next few weeks.
There ain't you, girl.
Reloading!
Nope. I'll go right next to the bridge. On the other side of the water.
Cover me. I have to use this kit.
Hold up, y'all.